Hello, everyone. This is Stephen McNallen with another episode of Gods, Folk, and Destiny. Whose gods? Our gods and goddesses, the holy powers of the North, led by Odin and Frigga. Whose folk? Our folk, born of ancient Hyperborea, now spanning the globe with eyes on the stars. Whose destiny? Our destiny, which we will win by hard work and mighty deeds. Honor, sovereignty, well-being, and the existence of our people forever. So shall it be. Tonight, Bryan Wilton is perhaps the most prolific author in Alcatraz, with the possible exception of Edred Thorson. His special talent, in my opinion, is to take the Northern lore and use it to produce real solutions for real people, enhancing their spirituality and generally bringing them to the ways to improve their lives. Tonight, we're going to talk about some of his recent works. We're going to talk about the recent Fall Fest. But first, to support this work, do the following 4 things. Number 1, subscribe. Number 2, like. Number 3, comment. Number 4, share. Help me to awaken our slumbering folk and change the world in our lifetimes. Sharing this podcast is one small way to do that. Bryan, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing good, man. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thanks for that intro. That was good stuff, man. I feel special.
Oh, yeah, that's me, Mr. Emotional. Heartfelt, brother, heartfelt.
I know it, man. It's good stuff.
I mean, I haven't seen you in, 2 days?
2 days, man. Man, that was a good time. Yeah. Yeah.
For folks who don't know, we were at the AFA's Fall Fest out in Minnesota, and it was a very nicely attended event. More importantly, it was intense in a good way. Out there in the woods with stars out at night and just great stuff.
It really is, I think, the foundation of everything we're trying to do. Yes.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, I did give a talk. It was something I kind of pulled together at the last minute because I forgot my computer and then finally created PowerPoint, and I had to come up with something. So I come up with something on the drive up. And there's a couple of things that came to my mind on the drive. I think several years ago I wrote a book. I think it was Understanding Austru, and I pointed out that so many people get onto social media and they look at what somebody's writing or typing, and they're taking it for, in a bad, to use a pun, is that they're taking it as the gospel truth, but they have no idea what the mental capacity of that individual might be, whether or not they could be legitimately insane. Who knows? And we look at that written word, and Socrates pointed out in his discussion with Phaedrus concerning the father of letters that we've attributed ideas to them that they don't possess. It's when we get together, when we sit in those rooms, when we actually get to interact with each other, that we learn, that we begin to feel, when we put all 4 aspects of our being into this developing way of life. Because you're the one that told me years ago, this is a way of life. It's not an easy way of life, but it's a good way of life. And it's more than just so much lip service and something that even maybe I've written. You know what I mean? And that struck me. And you and I have gone through these things for, I don't know, you've done it for all your adult life, literally. And I've done it for the last over a decade now, well over a decade. And it really is. I find when I don't go to those events, I feel it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I feel it.
Absolutely. Well, you've got a style of your own. It's very unique. And I think a lot of people, myself included, like it. I mean, you managed to get your information out to a lot of people just by being understandable and by relating it to real people's lives. When I'm sitting in front of you, sometimes I feel that you must have had some ancestors that were backwoods preachers or something. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a good way, because your message is hitting home, and it's well done, and it's, again, relevant, but it's passionate, and you talk about people's lives, how to make them better, and that's powerful.
You know what, really, I appreciate that compliment. I really do. But I think we've spent so long trying to justify our radical departure from the norm that we've got, well, this book says this, and this book says this, and this book says this. When am I just going to stand up and say, yeah, that's what I am, and just run with it? Not really matter what anybody else thinks. I'm proud of it. Put some passion behind it. Put some energy behind it. Put your best foot forward. You know, when you do those kinds of things and you feel it, it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks. I think that was the other kind of part of my message. We can no longer afford to play a walk-on role in everyone else's lives. We can't spend our time anymore. I mean, how much time do you really think we have to cultivate this? You know what I mean? I mean, at some point we got to start figuring out, hey, I'm going to be the star in my own life, no matter what anybody else says, and this is the pattern I'm going to use to do it. And those results have got to be at the front and center of everything we're doing, you know, and it's kind of really where I'm at today with it. Yeah, that's exactly what I do. I'm not going to try to explain it to somebody. I mean, I don't know how many times I've talked to somebody and they try to they get asked the question, well, what's Asatru? Well, shit, what is it? There's a 30-minute dissertation of well, it's a blah 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 and the blah blah blah, and hell, it's just a way that I live a good life. You know, it's just that simple. How do we get around that? How do we make it easier for people to say, yes, I follow the old gods, I follow this ancient path, and instead of trying to explain why, let's start giving the reason. And it's allowed me to become a better father. It's allowed me to live a better life. It's allowed me to not be a drug addict or a junkie or a drunk or, you know, beat my kids or, you know, all of those things. It's allowed me to move forward in the workplace. I follow this path because it's helped me achieve this here, here, and here. That's the real turnaround. That's the real crux. That's when you can't knock it. You know what I mean? People can make fun of all your justifications, but when you say, hey, I did this, this, and this because I follow this path and I can stand tall and walk down the street, nobody can knock that. You know, nobody knocks a Hindu.
Right. Because you're talking about something that's objective, visible, and demonstrable. You know, just talking about living a better life. And you're not talking theology. You're talking about results rather than about the mechanism.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We need to start seeing more results. And I think we have kind of failed to create that image of what that result's going to look like. You know, I remember when I first got into the AFA, after we met at Hebrew Runestone, and shortly became a folk builder, and then got into the Gothi program under Matt. You know, we at that point, being young in Asatru, so to speak, I figured that was kind of the cultivation of what following this path might be. And under Matt's tutelage and yours and a few others, I began to realize there's more to this than just getting that title. And it was a slow awakening, to be sure, because I'm dense as a box of rocks. But it did happen, and it was good. It is good.
So tell me, Bryan, how did you come to Asatru? What got you here?
I'd been a failure one more time in life. I'd lost a big company. I'd lost a wife, and I say lost as if I'm a victim. That's not the case. I might as well have just thrown my crank out on the ground and stomped on it myself, because it was my own pattern of self-sabotage, a pattern that I'd done many times in life. And pretty soon I didn't have anything. I was sleeping in my truck, just ready to give up. I began to see a lot of appeal of those guys that stood on the side of the road and held up signs. You know what I mean? Hey, I figure if they can do it, I can do it. There's a whole lot less stress in life, blah, blah, blah. And I had a dream. I had one of those Cecil B. DeMille epic kind of dreams. I had it was real. You know, you have those dreams and you think you're there, and I had one like that, and I was at a table, and the table was about eye level to me. Couldn't really sit up at the table. I wasn't tall enough. And there was a being to my left and another being to his left. And there was a container there, and we raised it. And we said, "Hail Odin." I don't know why. And I looked over my shoulder, and I had a cousin serving in the desert at the time. I think he was in Iraq at that time. When all that first kicked off, he was over there, and it appeared to be him. And he walked out and he said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I turned around and we raised the horn one more time, said, "Hail Odin." And I looked over my shoulder, and he was a little bit closer to me, had a much different appearance and aspect to him. He said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I turned around and said, "Hail Odin," one more time, and I never looked back. Well, I woke up from that, and I went downstairs, and I got to looking. That was an interesting dream. I'm going to check this out. Dreams are kind of cool. Let's see what happens. And I'll be danged if I didn't come across all of a sudden, hey, there's people really doing this. Well, maybe I'm going to take a look at it. First thing I came across was a Yahoo message board for the Odin Brotherhood. And that was a real interesting situation. And then I got to looking around, and for a couple of years, that's all I did. Just kind of looked and read some books and began to try it, and just walked around out in the woods and, tried to make an offering. But it was sincere. It was my sincere best, and tried to turn around. And soon thereafter, I picked up a stupid little job. And then the next thing you know, things started clicking. And the next thing you know, I'm at an event, and there's people tying ribbons around a tree. And there's this guy named Steve standing over there, and he started it all. And I'm checking it. That was my first event. That was the first time I ever came out of the woods to see what this really was. And it was neat. When you did an Odin's blow. That was the first time I was ever in an Odin's blow. And I remember we were standing there, and it was there was a lake behind us, and we were standing on that big open field. You were walking around with the horn, and as you were walking around, the wind blew up, and the embers from the fire kind of swirled around you and then went up as you were walking around. So a guy that had just shown up looking for that with the expectation of phenomenon, I got it. And I just like the dream. I've never looked back since. That's how I got started.
They say is history.
Yeah, it's exactly right. The rest is history.
Yeah. So, well, I wasn't kidding about you being possibly the most prolific author in house.
Yeah.
I haven't sat down to count how many Edred's done, but Edred's been doing it for a long time.
Right.
So I per unit of time, I think you've got to be the all-time House of Truth writing champ. And I've been doing the job for ages and ages and ages. I've only got one book out so far, but I've got countless brochures, pamphlets, miniature books. And, I do have some books and things in the works. So I'm not quite through on that. So what was the first thing you wrote?
The first thing I wrote was Ostrue Book of Days. And there was entirely an ulterior motive behind it. It was written as a journal. It wasn't written to be the authority. It was written with a passage from the lore. It was written with kind of my interpretation of it. And then there was a paragraph at the bottom for people to put their own thoughts, their own ideas. The hope in writing that was that we would never be in this situation of needing to reinvent the wheel again, that somebody's grandchild could pick that book up and say, well, that's what Grandpa was thinking, and kind of maybe pass it down. It's just a book, but when somebody puts their own thoughts into it, it becomes so much more, doesn't it? I would love to have my grandmother's diary. Well, now we have an opportunity to have grandfather's diary when he was writing about what his thoughts. It was a daily meditation, a daily journal. And the whole purpose behind it was I wanted to save the family farm. Remember when I was trying to save that farm? It was such a beautiful place. But there were other lessons to learn. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so from there, I wrote a book about the divine feminine and when I went to Utah, and I wrote one on Loki, which was, I read somewhere that there's been more ink spilled on the aspect of that one image than just about any other thing, and all of it contradicts itself. And
appropriately.
I know, right? And
of course.
How fitting, right? I mean, it's just so and from there, I think I've written somewhere in the neighborhood of 38, and I've published like 40. Some of them have been compilations, maybe 37 that I've written, and 40 that I've published, something along that.
So what's the secret to writing so much? What's your technique for all of the aspiring writers out there?
When I wrote Book of Days, it was a serious study in the Lord, because I had to, just a little passage, I had that little bit to look at, and I wrote it. So I began to pick all of that up. Well, that's kind of a discretion, that's an interpolation, and that's not supposed to be there. It's really supposed to be down here, and really learned it. Well, it made me hungry for more stuff. And as these horizons in my life began to expand, now I've got a new set of parameters with which to view the world. Now I've got a new set of ideas or tools that I can look at how a tree exists, or look at how water is such an essential part. And then you throw the runes on top of that, these aspects, these keys to the universe, and put them together. So I'll see something and I'll make kind of a note of it, and I'll start paying attention to that. And then in a couple of days, I'll see something else, and then I'll see something else. The one I'm working on now I was watching a special on Netflix, and an astronaut said when he pulled his socks off, all of the dead skin cells just kind of floated around. So every week they have to clean their filters. He said, I am literally not the same man I was 5 years ago. My bones, my skin, everything is sloughed off and been regenerated. And then I saw Mr. Donovan give a presentation on the Ouroboros, the snake that's continually devouring itself, becoming new. So now all of a sudden I've got this image showing up in my mind. Now I've got something to work with. Now I've got a concept of continual growth, rebirth. Berkano comes to mind. And now all of a sudden there's a big idea happening. And the real key to it is sitting down and doing it. Sitting down and writing. And usually when I find I have writer's block, I'll make the cover for the book. Then I'll get excited about it. And then I'll be excited. So the idea, the novelty's kind of wore off. I'm tired of writing it. I'm so sick of looking at this thing. I'll make the cover. Now I'm excited about it again, and I'll continue on. Honestly, that's how it works.
Well, that's pretty cool. So I know that Jack London used to force himself to write 1,000 words or 1,200 words or something like that every day, and he wouldn't quit until he got it done. Do you have any similar way of marking how you're doing? No. Honestly, when the idea hits, when I get the idea, I've got to get it on paper or I'll forget it. I figured out that if I don't sit down and do it, I'll forget it. And then I'm screwed. Then I got to wait a couple more days, and I might sit down to write something and get a sentence. And the next day I might sit down and write 2 chapters. But if I don't sit down when I have that idea or that thought or that thing that says, oh, hey, something clicked. If I don't sit down and write it, then I'll lose it, or it won't be authentic, or it won't come across as accurately as I want it to. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So but most of the time it's just sitting down and doing it. Sit down, even if you don't have an idea, sit down, look at it and read through it. Oh, wait a minute. I don't like that idea. That's not quite right. Let me make a change here. Well, let me change that. And the next thing you know, I've written another chapter. It's just sitting down to do it. Right. So you write most days? Most days, yeah. Something most days, yeah. I think the one I'm on now, let's see here. I think I've got something in the neighborhood of 80,000 words on this one. Well, that sounds like a good start. Yeah. Yeah, it's not too bad. It's really nice to be doing all of this on a computer instead of the way they did a zillion years ago on typewriters or by hand, because you don't have any idea of how much you've written. But when I can just punch a button or two and look up there and see, okay, how much text in this document or in this section, it's encouraging. You look and think, yes, I've only been doing this for 10 minutes and I've got 112 more words or whatever it is. It's kind of a game I play with myself to goad me on to further efforts, is to, every now and then go up there and check that text thing. Oh, wow. Look at all those words, man. Yeah. Get those words.
It's
So,
true. I mean, it's right. And because, I mean, both you and I mean, we've both taken a lot of abuse for what we've written, what we've produced, what we've put out there. There's always somebody wanting to naysay us, to negate the value of what we're trying to put out there, that's saying, oh, well, you don't want to listen to that, blah, blah. And so, okay, why am I doing this? What good am I doing here? What am I doing? What's this worth? And after you sit there and look at, a negative review, or you find some Facebook page where they're just going through, if you pay, and I figured this out when I first started writing, if I pay any attention to that, I get agitated. My mind is a tizzy. My thoughts become reactionary, and I lose that kind of spark of inspiration, that imagination that's so crucial to moving us forward, to reigniting this, because that it's sick people spreading their poison, I think. And all of us have been raised to react to the news, to get that vote, to, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And then it's I don't know, that's, we do have to play those games. We do have to motivate ourselves, because if somebody that is our friend jumps out there and supports us, now our friend is taking abuse too. How do we support that person? How do we encourage them to continue this good fight? How do we tell them it's all going to be worth it? That's the real struggle right there.
Yeah. I remember years ago, back whenever, there were all sorts of, like the old, news groups and stuff like that, that I would go online someday, and I would sit there and I would spend literally hours crafting these wonderful, insightful, and furious comments that somebody I was engaged with online. And at the end of the day, it's a little bit like the endorphin rush, from Facebook and all of this other stuff, but instead of just, writing a comment, clicking a comment, posting something, you're out there almost doing battle with the person. If they were in the room, there'd be trouble.
Oh, yeah.
and it was just such a huge waste of time. It's usually better just to walk away.
It is better to walk away. That was one of the reasons when I wrote Blind in One Eye, I came across this idea that the body doesn't know that what the mind is thinking isn't really happening. So you're right. It's feeding itself all of these chemicals, and people get every bit as addicted to that chemical rush of righteous indignation, especially online with regards to this spirituality and others. And they confuse that flood of emotion for some kind of spirituality. And it's fairly perverse, to tell you the truth, but that is what's happening in many cases. Well, if I'm not righteously indignant enough about it, I'm not doing it right, or I'm not working for whomever, doing the work of Jesus, or whatever you want to call it. But I think we're going to have to contend with that as a species, as a race. This ready availability of a false sense of power, of energy. Is this what it's becoming? A false sense of energy?
Yeah, just an adrenaline rush, really. We'd do better to walk away from the computer and go out and spend 5 minutes pounding a heavy bag or something.
I just try to keep up with Scarlett. Good night.
I'm sorry. Say that one again.
I just try to keep up with Scarlett. That little thing, she doesn't stop running.
No, I don't think she much slowed down. Oh, you got to tell people about the bear.
Okay, the bear is something that was cool. So in Minnesota, we're up at this beautiful river state park, and it's a beautiful temperate boreal forest up in northern Minnesota. And Scarlett's sitting there. We're driving out to this overlook over the river, and Scarlett says, "Daddy, how do you think you would say bear if we saw a bear?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. Should we say it quiet so it doesn't spook and come at us? Or should we holler so it runs away? What should we do?" And we talked about what we're going to say if we see a bear for this drive for a couple of miles. We get out, we go up, we look over the river. I notice some horse riders are kind of skittish. This lady can't get on her horse. And I'm like, that lady's a long way from anywhere to not be able to get on that horse. And didn't really pay no attention, didn't think of it. We get back out on the road, we stop, we take some pretty pictures. we come around the bend, and I'll be danged if there's not a black bear standing in the middle of the road with 2 cubs. And I said, bear. That's the way you say it. And she set up and she saw the little cubs running, and we were, that was a highlight. That was to see that light in a child's eye. It was amazing. It was really cool. It was fun. And, I lived in Alaska. I've seen lots of bears, but I was so unexpected to see one there.
Yeah, I didn't see many in Texas.
No. But they're starting to get them in Oklahoma now.
Really?
Yeah, Arkansas has got one of the best black bear reintroduction programs in the United States, and they're coming across the Ouachita Mountains and in the Illinois River bottoms. They're starting to show. We even have a hunting season for them now in a couple of counties. Who'd have thought?
Yeah, I've always been very impressed with bears. I know we're kind of drifting around on the topic thing, but
I like good conversation.
I don't either. I mean, we're just sitting there chatting, man. And as I related to you, I've seen bears in the wild 3 times since I've been living in California, and 2 of those times were directly related to either a ritual that I had done literally moments before regarding bears, or another sort of religious activity or other, like banners and so forth that related to bears. And I figure the odds on that. Literally 1 in countless millions. But there it is. Sometimes the universe just works that way. That's when you're doing something significant, when you're doing something that matters, something that shakes the fabric of things just a little bit. The unknown responds, and it's a wonderful thing.
I read when I was writing about the flows of energy, flow of life, the flows of energy across the surface of the world. I had the idea that was the language of the birds, and I read that the fox can see or determine magnetic fields, and the further north it goes, the more accurately it can watch the magnetic fields. And you have to wonder if this animal is not sensing these energies, or this, because we're all excited, we're all agitated. There's a lot of enthusiasm that comes with these ceremonies. Oh, and I remember the name of that book that you talked about, The Return of a Fallen King, I think is the name of that book, about the bear in Europe, how the lion. Yes, that was an excellent read. I'm glad you recommended that.
Yeah, quite like that. So what's your latest book?
Well, I forgot. Let me think. I am every week I just started with the lore, the poetic and the prosaic. Every week I have a webinar, and anyone that's part of our group is more than welcome to join in, and I sit down and I read a portion of the lore, and I talk about it, and just that part of it, how it might relate to modern life, how it might work. So I take an hour every Sunday and talk to people, and they have a chance to ask questions and interact and discuss it with me. And I've been writing that. I've been trying to put that down on paper. And I'll tell you what, if you talk for an hour, I promise you there's a lot of words goes with that. And then I had an inspiration for another book too, and that is one on beauty. I was watching of all things, I was watching a documentary called Civilizations on Netflix, and he was talking about landscape art. And it in the ancient Teutonic priesthood, he's talking, I think it was Caesar that was discussing the 3 types of individuals that had roles in the Northern European society. I think specifically the Celts. Talking about the bard, the Gothi, and the Scald, maybe? Is that what it was? He was talking about these individuals, the Gothi being the one responsible for the judgments, handing out those best judgments that would be equitable to most men. And the Scald was this individual that was skilled in poesy, the bard, I should say. So when I look at the lore, there's this idea of groggy, and these songs that they sing, these words that they say, they paint an image across our imagination. And in this documentary on landscape art, he was talking about these artists kind of creating this divine image of the world they live in. And the spoken word, the mentorship, that shared emotion and feeling, it does the same thing. It spreads across our imagination this idea of something very special that we want to hold on to. So I'm writing this. I've got this other book kind of going on beauty, and it's kind of centered around that, the ability of the bard to weave an image of beauty that unites the divine in the world we live in, so we might go out and step up to the plate and be something better. Beauty is an important aspect of that. You know, what men won't do for a beautiful face, what lengths they won't go to secure a beautiful piece of land. Just, I think it's how we're built. We respond to that. And in today's world, it's easy to focus on that negative. It's easy to witness all of the ugliness that happens in the world, that happens to children, that happens in foreign countries, that happens at our border, that happens in politics, and we focus on all that. And here we are in this new spirituality with this new wide horizon, and we literally have a blank canvas upon which to paint an image our children would cherish. So that's kind of the focus on this new book that I'm writing on, and there's a lot of support for that idea throughout our lore. All of these beautiful goddesses that are powerful and actuated, all of these strong, powerful, handsome men that are gods that deal with loss and tragedy and still hang on to something beautiful in their lives. Worth fighting for. Tyr sacrifices his hand for that tribe. It must have been something very powerful. I can't imagine if it was a group of stumpy-legged, hairy, hook-nosed men, that he's going to go out there and, well, I'm going to give a hand. No, he's going to say, we're going to fight for it. You know what I mean? But there's a beautiful idea in that Asgard represents. Is it attainable for us? I don't know, but I think in our homes it is. I think with our children it is. I think when we get at Fall Fest, I think it is. We all dress up and stand and blow, and we're all attractive, and there's something very special about beauty. A lot of people have died over it, I can tell you that. Big wars have been fought over it.
The face that launched 1,000 ships.
Damn right, man. You're damn right. So that's beauty, and then the foundations of faith. The one I'm working on is this discussion on the lore, what it relates to, and it goes pretty deep, especially with Sigurd and Brunhild. You have this young man who's taken under the wing by an adoptive father, but that adoptive father, they say he was short, but he was much skilled in magic and all this other stuff. Well, turns out that was a load of malarkey, because when things get tough, every time he's cowering on the ship during the storm. He's hiding in the heather when Sigurd is killing his brother. But through his whole upbringing, Sigurd has made sure to spread that idea that his father raised him with, and that is greed and selfishness. And, well, you need to hate Fafnir because I hate Fafnir. And if you really care for me, well, you're going to kill Fafnir. Well, that's his brother. So there's a real sickness going on there that I think many people fail to realize, and I've gone to length to go over that idea that, well, if you really loved me, you'd hate that person just as much as I do. I mean, I've heard people in my family say it, and I'm sure there's lots of families saying that, and it's an automatic trained response. And Sigurd is the one that steps out of it when he begins to understand the language of the birds. And Brunhild shared with him a memory draught. Sit on the edge of the bed, just like the first children in the Rigsthula. They sit on the edge of the bed, they share a drink, they talk about what's coming. That's a tradition. That's a heritage that we can lay claim to. And then they learn the language of the runes. Now all of a sudden something much different happens. As soon as they step off that mountain, the world eats their lunch. But in that one moment, there's something very beautiful there. See, it all kind of ties together as far as I'm concerned.
Right. I can see how it would. You've got the contrast between the moment of beauty, the episode of beauty, but then the so-called real world pounds back in, and you've got to take action, and it's time to fight the battle again. So maybe there's sort of an alternation between these moments of beauty and the moments of stress and strain and combat and so forth.
We do need to cultivate ourselves through adversity, through some kind of struggle. And more often than not, the toughest tussles I've ever had were with myself and what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong. And I think a lot of when Sigrid and Brunhild leave that moment of a beautiful foundation of a relationship and they go back into the world, there's a lot of trained responses that come back up. And I think it's kind of a warning for us. When people come into Asatru, when they show up here, when they return home, there's a moment of beauty that we can capitalize on. And I think it behooves us to capitalize on that instead of giving their old hates, angers, or resentments a new coat of paint and sending them back out in the world, and they lead with the chin and they get the fire knocked out of them, and because they don't understand all of it. They're not paying attention, and they're still reacting in the same manner they did as a child, as a young man, as the individual who so thoroughly screwed up their own life that they had to make the radical decision to change the foundation of their faith. Well, I'll give it a new coat of paint and try it again, and they get their asses whipped. and that's so. I think Sigrid and Brunhild is this real, true message of how to not do that, and the feminine is an essential part of it.
What's your thought on the things that we can do for our young people, especially I think young men, because so many young men seem lost? But actually, a lot of the young women seem lost too. So what do you think in the way of the essential values, the essential ways of interacting with these kids to help them get through their stressful periods?
You know, I know it sounds cheesy and it's such a term, but with one of the reasons I think Scarlett is so well adjusted is that when she sits down to talk to Daddy's fully present. I am fully there. I am in that moment discussing it with her, and she knows she has my full attention. There's a lot of security in that for a child. I'm not busy worrying about what's going on with the news. I'm paying attention to Scarlett, and she's going to have a different path. At a certain age, she's going to become a woman whether she wants to or not. What a scary thought for these young ladies. I mean, whether they've been trained, whether they've had a good example in a mother or a grandmother, they're still going to become a woman. Men can be boys until they're 40 years old. I know, I've done it. So, but for men, it's about, so many men keep looking to women to confer upon them masculinity, to make sure that, well, you were man enough, you're man enough, and blah, blah, blah. Well, women can't confer masculinity. Only other men can. Only a father can. And those women are expecting this new husband or this new man in their life to understand what they're thinking before they even think it like their father did. So we have the real challenge in deciphering that riddle there. And I think, it's not the great-grandmother or the grandmother or the mother in the Riggs Thula that reap the rewards of Riggs' visit. It's their grandchildren. It's they have a son, and then he has children, and those children build a civilization. So you're not far off the mark with the observation of that is our future. They're the ones that are going to reap the rewards of everything we do right or everything we do wrong. And we really don't we're figuring it out. But I think being fully present in that moment with that child or with that son and being with them right then and there so they understand that we are there, we are strong. Teaching those little things. No, you don't want to do that. This is why. No, you don't want to do that. This is why. We've got to become more involved in our children's lives. We've got to be there. And I think in a world where we send them off to public school and we send them to daycare and then we got to work the night shift or we got to work late, you're going to have to stay over here. There's a lot of easy excuses not to do that. I think probably one of the biggest blessings we can get from Asatru is this, whoa, I'm going to pay attention to my child here, and I really don't care if that customer doesn't like what they bought. I really don't care if that project finishes. I don't care if it short dicks every cannibal in the Congo that this bill doesn't get paid right this minute or the bed isn't made. I'm going to pay attention to this child. And the second part of that is the partner that you're raising that child with. and paying attention, being in present with that partner so you can build communication. Um, these are all real challenges, and I see that in the tale of Sigurd and Brunhild. I see that in the tale of Rigsthula. I see the answers to these problems that our society faces in our lore. Think about that. For tens of thousands of years, it provided that purpose, guidance, and directions to raise literally men that could build a kingdom with their own hand. Now we got guys in the streets in Portland celebrating being a beta male. What? How'd that happen? It's a pretty clear sign we're off the beaten path here. You know what I mean? So that's the benefit. I mean, Austria and these other indigenous faiths that are arising have the potential to really do that.
Right. Yeah. What do you think about rites of passage, especially for young men?
I think they need to be an essential part of their life, but I don't think they need to be taken lightly. I think there needs to be, those rites of passage, it's a lifelong process. I mean, from the time we can take football, everybody's played some kind of sport or athleticism. So as a child, they see it, they see their brother playing it, and they're going to train, and they begin to work hard at it, and they got a starting position, or if they're in bench. So their focus is on developing that aspect of themselves. How do we create in our children that sense of importance of, yes, it's important to be a man? What's that image of that look like? So they can tell you what the first string football player looks like. They can tell you what first chair in band looks like. Can they tell you what the image of a man in this world looks like? It's all about creating that image they can focus on. That's the image, and this is why. And that's something there are men out there doing good work on that. And I think as a rite of passage, it begins with creating that image in that child's mind of what they should look like when they become that adult. A beautiful mother, a strong father, to provide, to be reliable, to be present, to be responsible. Those 9 noble virtues, they have stood the test of time, if nothing else. There's a pretty good way to build an image right there. I think those rites of passage are essential, but we shouldn't make them cartoonish. They need to be real struggles.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of basic training. A young man is supposed to be at some point a warrior in his life. If he can cultivate those aspects of warrior, the discipline that comes with being a soldier, of being able to put one foot in front of the other, there's a pretty good chance once he gets that image in his mind, when it comes time to set that weapon aside, he'll have those skills and he can protect his home. But there's a rite of passage there too, from becoming the warrior to becoming the husband. And from becoming the husband, lover, and the father to becoming the grandfather and the king in your home. And from there, after that, becoming the sage and preparing for that walk with the gods, whatever that might look like. All of those are rites of passage. And I think we need to start looking at all of them. Okay, I'm 49 years old. I don't need to be running around out there with an M16 anymore. I did that for 7 years, 26 years ago. You know what I mean? So where was my rite of passage to go from there to coming out and being a father? I screwed that up. I didn't even know I was supposed to do that, and I failed. So we got to look at it. When Darren came home from the Army, I went out with a group of local heathens here, and we had a ceremony, and I handed to him a gigantic hammer my father made out of a piece of stainless steel thing. Well, you may have seen it out of Hebrew, but I handed that to him as a rite of passage. You've come home from the Army. Now it's time to be the father and the husband and succeed. So we'll see what happens.
Right. We do a very good job of one way or another of sending young men off to battle, but we don't do a very good job of bringing them home sometimes. And it seems to me there should be, a ritual and a mindset and a deliberate process for, bringing them home and getting them where they need to be.
Giving them permission to let it go. I saw it.
Yeah.
There was an interview with Mike Tyson on Joe Rogan, and Cus D'Amato would take Mike Tyson and he would hypnotize him. They would take him to a hypnotist, and this hypnotist would teach him, would help him repeat these mantras. You're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this for him, you're going to react, you're going to hip, you're going to win, you're going to win, you're going to fight, you're going to win. And then Customato died. And then Mike Tyson didn't know how to turn it off. And we saw what happened. It was a huge train wreck that the media loved. And he's just now figuring it out. And I think that happens with a lot of us too. We don't figure out how to turn it off.
Yeah, I think you're right. Good point. So going back to some of your books again, can you tell me a little bit about what's your one about One Eye Open?
Blind in One Eye.
Blind in One Eye. Thank you. Yeah. You don't talk about that one very much. I haven't heard about it. So do share us a little bit of info on that, if you would.
Blind in One Eye is a Odin sacrificed an eye in the well. So he sacrificed the ability to see so he could know all things, right? It kind of has to do with these flows of energy across the world. As animals migrate to new pastures, ancient humans would follow those animals. They would literally follow these flows of greening pastures across the world. And yeah, see, that's the wrong part of it. That is a part of it. But the most important part of it, I think, is about the whale. And I know that sounds funny. When Eager's feast takes place, Odin sits on the side of the mountain in Maria's boyhood he's seen. He's going through his life. Everything looks good. He's sitting up on the mountain. He's got it all. He's got it made. And then he gets this dour look on his face. Then all the joy leaves his eye, and he decides to go to the sea. He decides to have this great feast, and there's a journey. Tyr goes through a rite of passage as he separates himself from his father and collects that inheritance, that mighty cauldron, to brew this mead that all these gods are going to share. But they do it all in the sea, this laguz, this interconnectedness of all things. Hang on just 1 second. I am so sorry about this. Damn it.
All right, everybody, take a drink. I'm drinking green tea today. Not the healthiest thing I could do. Dave, do we have any questions or anything shaping up from our people tonight? Yeah, okay.
Dude, I'm sorry. My battery died.
Oh,
Had to go get a plug-in on it.
okay.
So anyway, as I was saying, I'm so terribly sorry to the audience. I wish I'd have been prepared, and I apologize to you too. I know you're put a lot more professionalism in this than most people do. Kind of unexpected. But as I was saying about the whale, they go to the sea. They have this great feast, right? So all of these assembled gods and goddesses are sharing this feast and this drink in this body of energy, surrounded by laguz. What an interesting idea. Everything that walks, breathes, crawls, talks, lives at all is composed largely of water, right? The whale used to be a land animal. You can find the remnants of its hip bones in its skeletal remains. And yet, when it returns to the sea, it became the largest living animal in the world, the largest creature to ever exist. Dolphins have a sense of intelligence we can't begin to comprehend. They survive in this ocean. They survive in this water. They are in the well. All of their needs are met. They survive. They thrive. They grow to unimaginable lengths. The blue whale is so large, its tongue weighs as much as an elephant. A man can swim through its blood vessels. This is an amazing creature. It lives, it got rid of its ideas on dry land and returned to the ocean and became this magnificent creature. There's a real correlation to what we're doing with our spirituality as the whale returning to that ocean to become this great and magnificent thing. So when I wrote Blind in One Eye, that was what was going through my head was, hey, wait a minute, we flex we share emotions and love, and we build our bodies and we read books. And what about our spirituality? We're entering this great, wonderful realm of spirituality to express ourselves, to make these connections with the divine. We have these examples already in front of us, and yet all we got to do is look, and all we have to do is look with one eye. So Blind in One Eye was really a book that went along that. And the same thing with the tree. I mean, look at a tree. I talked about that in my presentation. It gathers all of these solid minerals and nutrients from the ground, and it moves up through the tree, and then out through the leaves is this gas. And if a rock had an imagination, it could no more imagine what it would mean to become a gas after moving through that living thing. How does it move water when it's got gravity pulling at it all the time? And yet look at the size of a redwood. Greatest living thing on the dry land is a tree. They communicate with each other. They can recognize kin. The largest living objects on the world are the groves of aspen on the eastern slopes of in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains. These things also have sensations. These things also, who knows how complicated they may be, but they know to send carbon to this tree over here, or let's send some carbon to this tree over here. There's amazing research being done on a tree. And yet we're sitting here still considering that, well, I've got a book here and I've written this and that, and so I'm probably more intelligent than other thing. And yet there are truly fascinating aspects, expressions of life occurring all around us. Blind in One Eye is a book about that, based on our lore.
Wow. That's outstanding. I gotta cut that out. Yeah. So you were talking earlier about your webinars and such.
Yes.
If you will, I'm sure people are going to want to know more about that.
Yeah.
What can they find out about that, or is there information I need to post in my comments?
We have a closed group called the Noble-Minded Heathen, and it's the one that's got the green moss with the Othala rune, and we post the link in there every Saturday, and then whoever wants to jump on at 7:30 Sunday evening can jump on, and I'll talk for an hour, just like I just talked about something that's going on from the lore with relation to our lore. And I try not to deviate from it too much, because whether anybody likes it or not, that's where all of these books come from. That's where all these ideas originate. That's all we really have. We have Tacitus, we have Julius Caesar, we have Adam of Bremen, we have a couple of fairy tales, and then we have the Poetic and the Prose Edda. And no matter what anyone might think, those are the tools we've been given to build a new future, to become these whales of spirituality. Not the great bloated carcass or dragon of the church, but these great spirits that roam the ocean. It's kind of a romantic ideal, but this is what I talk about. These are things I discuss. And we have people from Brazil show up every week, people from all over the United States. And then I like it. I enjoy it a lot. But yeah, I got a group called the Noble-Minded Heathen, and that's where it's at.
Okay, so that can be found on Facebook.
Yeah, and I save the videos, and I post them on YouTube. So anybody wants to go back and look at all of them, they're all there. But it's a good time.
Yeah. All right, real fine. So Bryan, as we're kind of heading towards the end here, what do you see as the future of Asatru over the next few years? Where are we going? Where do we need to go?
As we see this, there are 850 million Caucasians in the world. that have a legitimate expectation or right, if you will, to embrace this ideology, this faith, this also true, this true to the old gods. And there's Rodnovery, there's your Hellenismos, there's these other pagan traditions, but we can provide that example. But at some point, we've got to be that idea, that example that when people look at us, they say, you know what? That guy's got something pretty cool going on in his life. I think I want some of it. That's what that's where we need to move to. And because there's a lot of people out there that are hurting, that are sick, that are not doing well, that are lost, that are angry, that are focused on all kinds of things that aren't helping them build a better world. And Also True has that potential to be an idea to express, to help us become what we're supposed to become. I can't imagine us moving out into the universe without a more solid foundation than the one we currently have. I see us becoming that example. I see us becoming that legitimate idea to help people come home, become that whale, so to speak.
And every single person listening to this right now has a part to play in that.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. Yeah, there's at some point we're going to sit down and say, you know what, all this other stuff, it's just not that important. But this is Joseph Campbell in his book on in the hero's journey, or during the 1960s, wrote a book, said that whenever a Native American tribe would settle into an environment, they would incorporate themselves into that environment and make the entire thing an expression of the divine, from the person, how they interact with the community, how they live in the forest, how they hunt, all that stuff. It was all an expression of beautiful divinity. It could be savage. It could be things we didn't understand. And if you look through history across the world, it is littered with civilizations that have separated themselves from the world they lived in. And when times got tough, every one of them have failed. I think this is an opportunity. This is literally that lifeline to help us either return to the ocean or pull ourselves out of the mud, however you wish to see it. But this is that opportunity, as far as I'm concerned, to save ourselves from all of this nonsense we deem as important.
Outstanding. Okay. Let's find out if we got any questions out there or anything we need to field.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's going on out there, Dave? Okay, bud.
Let's see. I'm not seeing much questions, but I do see a lot of positive feedback in the chat here.
Good. That's what we like.
Good.
And just for the information of everybody listening to this out there, I do try to respond to every comment that shows up, on the video on YouTube, and over a period of days. I usually get a lot of them done the first 24 hours, and then like some of them for the previous, I only got through a few days ago. So, but I do answer every single one. So if they have a question, if they're trying to get in touch with Bryan or whatever, maybe we can help facilitate that. Bryan, you got any closing comments for us?
Man, I don't. I wish I had something eloquent to say, but I think I've spit it all out, man. I think I've run out of juice. But hey, if you want to go to my YouTube channel, just Google search Bryan Wilton, and I got a YouTube channel, and do the same thing that you do there. Give it a like and a share. Go to Amazon, buy a book, find out what you want to see. There's some good stuff in those books. And I don't know if it'll make you feel like you're more right than anybody else, but might help you move forward in the world the way you want to move forward. And that's the real deal right there.
All right. Outstanding. Thank you very much, Bryan, for being with us, man.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
I knew this would go well. It could hardly go any other way.
Right?
I was pretty sure that we would find plenty to talk about.
Between us two, yeah, there's gonna be a discussion. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, with my closing comments, before we sign off, Wotan Network is a spiritual, cultural, and metapolitical non-organization actively invoking the might and wisdom of Wotan for the awakening of our folk. You can find Wotan Network on Facebook, those of you who haven't been kicked off yet, and other social media if you haven't been kicked off of that yet. Or you can go to our new website. We actually got a real functioning website that we really like, www.wotan-network.com/blog, or you can just contact me. So, also, please check out my videos over on Rites TV and subscribe with Henrik and Lana while you're there. They're very good folks, like them a lot. Also, check out the other current creators right here on Raffenfolk. That's it for tonight, folks. Keep your powder dry, your cupboard full, your spouse happy, your children close, your data out of the hands of the deep state, and love life in Midgard, for it is a wondrous gift. Good night.